We are going to show you this evening works from 1994 to up to now. I also did short subjects and experimental films before 1994. I started to make films in 1980. The first 4 works were purely analog. They were painted and scratched on film stock directly, or one was done with flashlight. The series Glockenspiel. First I painted the first film that you will see frame by frame with the digital brush. The next film was already a bit calculated with a special experimental software, and the 4th film of the series Glockenspiel contains 3D elements. From the beginning, I tried to include some kind of details into the painting, but developed it step by step. And in the end, when I landed at the fractal systems, I found the most elaborate solution to get back something from my work, an answer of some kind of coincidences, which also took place when I painted or stamped or scratched on film stock. So when I worked on fractal cycles, for example, I used some kind of a synthesizer software that synthesizes mathematical functions that are fractal-like, and I worked on it very long, and learned it by doing, and put much weight on creating irregular shapes and shades and movements so that it gets nature-like and doesn't look like synthetic colors and lines, but the way nature includes dots and lines and all kinds of elements. First I had the film and then made the music. At that time I had no chance to work it out as exactly as I could later when I worked digital. So I thought I could be like this, as synchronous as possible. Then it started to overlap, it got closer, and I started to work on both, and each influenced the other. Was processed in a different way. Moonlight was put on the optical printer to a special material that got these nice colors, because otherwise it wouldn't have been possible to preserve them in that way. Firehouse was just a dupe on the optical printer because it was already on positive print stock. I made it with the flashlight on positive print stock. Fractal cycles, it's made in a way that the spectator moves all the time, so there is no obvious edit in it. You just move fluidly from one place to the next. I worked on it for 4 years, so I had periods that I worked on the sound and periods that I worked on the imagery. But it always went in parallel and influenced each other, more or less.
Because you're working with only technology and with softwares, can you explain a little bit more how your creative process goes on in this last work?
I started to learn with that software in 2000 and came to the point that I by learning by doing, it is a kind of tree that has tiles, and these tiles contain functions or parameters which are mathematical calculations. But it works quite visual, so I can work intuitively. I already know what does what, but actually it's very complicated because when you have one tile or two or three, it's easy, but as each tile influences the other tiles, and each has special qualities. For example, if it has one in only, then it is flat, will give you a line or a flat image. But if it has 2 ins or 3 ins, then it goes more into depth and space, or it does more with the movement, or it does more with the color, and so on. It can include lots of coincidences, and that's what you can learn when you use it. You get used to that kind of partner that speaks with you. It's quite a universe that has its own life.
Is your music fractal too?
Yes, in some way, yes, yeah. I use software that also generates this kind of coincidences that I can also control or stylize, but basically it's fractal like the sounds and soundscapes.
How do you visualize the movie before you start working on it?
Well, in the past 10 or 15 years, 10 years maybe, the starting point was not conscious because I always hope that I won't start again something. So it happens to me, and then I just play around with something, and I think, okay, it has catched me, so I can't escape. I work as long as I think is necessary until it's the way it should be, but I can't explain this with my intellect only. Of course, I do control it. I have to get distance to be able to see it again and all these things. And sometimes I do a bit too much, but usually I have to correct it, especially the latest few films, I have to correct it several times because I also need a rest. It's again this little piece, again this little, and then there's a point that everything is the way it should be, and I think, well, finally it's the way it was meant to be.
A mí especialmente me ha interesado el trabajo analógico en 35 y quería saber si considera que lo ha abandonado o es un material que puede seguir trabajando más adelante.
I'm working on a dance piece now and on a dance music CD, so I don't do any visuals at the moment. Or let's say my visuals now are the bodies are painting when dancing. So that's my present work. And if I come back to something or not, I don't know, maybe if time allows. I'm very busy all the time, I don't know, maybe.